Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect.
Pretty girls should always smile.
I've been waiting for a movie since Dune Part 2 to come along and rival the number one spot of 2024 for me.
Wow.
And the substance is that movie.
It is that high. It is Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
For you specifically,
Yeah.
coming in on Dune Part 2 level is
I was wondering if anything was gonna scratch that tier, or if Dune 2 was just gonna be on its own up there all year. And we're there. We're there. We have a little competition. Things are getting interesting with the year in film. So Lee, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your experience? We almost didn't go see this movie. It was so windy outside. We thought about staying home, and I was like, it's showing at the Enzian. It's the last showing. I was telling you, Hunter, maybe we should go see it, but there's also a hurricane. I was shocked that the Enzian was even open. I called ahead. I was like, are you guys okay?
And then we felt bad if we didn't go. They were like needing the business. So we didn't want to like gyp them, even though we bought tickets. So there was a whole thing. The Enzian, for the folks that are watching,
our local indie theater.
This is like a very rare thing where we have an indie theater that's kind of run by a family, and they have couches for seats and they serve food. It's really great. And they show really awesome film. Here's the thing, to tie it back to Megalopolis, there is a world in which movies can be better quality and basically have maybe like 3 or 4 cast members.
Yeah.
Maybe like 2 or 3 sets.
Very small. Yeah.
And it tells a gut-wrenching story with some of the best acting you've ever seen. And you feel it and you chew on it for days.
And you're usually, I don't want to say a hater, but you're picky. You don't just hand out praise.
Listen,
like, no.
What you guys see on this podcast, I have to deal with every single day. Like, Ernest wakes up and he talks about movies. Every time that we get into any type of confrontation or anything that happens in our lives romantically, Ernest ties it to a movie and he brings up movie references. That is his love language.
Man, the real hardest job is the wife of a podcaster.
And I live through it all day long, right? But like the films that he references and the things that he brings out in his core are movies that I don't vibe with. Like, I don't feel them in my core. It's like, yeah, I'm watching it. It's entertainment. Like, I'm blinking, I'm alive, I'm watching it. It's on the screen.
Is it Tom Hanks quoting The Godfather to Meg Ryan?
No, it's usually it's usually like Tom Cruise. It's usually always Tom Cruise. It's always usually Tom
Hey, it
Cruise.
all comes back to Tom.
But here's the thing. Once in a while, there is something that I end up watching, usually reluctantly, and it changes me. It changes the way that I think, or it just relates to something that I feel that I don't think I've seen on TV before. And then I get why this podcast is important to you guys. I get why cinema and the artistic root of why you even spend so much time and energy reading and watching as much as you do, why it's there. And you pulled up Whiplash on Letterboxd just now. Whiplash is one of those things. Whiplash is one of those movies that personifies a feeling that our culture experiences that I don't think is healthy, and I think people need to talk about more. And until you see it on screen, you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
The
there
power
it
of
is.
the art form.
The Substance was that times 10, because most films, and I'm not going to spoil too much.
No
Most-
specifics.
Not at all. No specifics. Most films, they will always show you a little bit of the story that they're trying to tell and hint at more. This film said, we're going to hit the gas on everything you thought about this idea. And we have a friend that trolled us and was trying to say, oh, every beat in this movie
You
was
can
like,
call him out.
every beat in this film was like
It's friend of the
predetermined.
show, Harry.
Oh, yeah, Harry.
We love you, Harry.
We love you, Harry, but you talk shit. But the thing is, yeah, I could watch the trailer and assume that this movie was going to be what this movie was. But in no way did I sign up and sit down and buy a ticket and assume that they were going to hit the gas and go that hard, because they held frames that were hard to look at for a long time.
Yeah, longer than another director would.
I came
definitely.
home having to like disassemble a part of like my idea of what being a woman was. I had to come home and
Unpack.
unpack like how I deal with my own self-loathing and how
We talked about this movie for hours.
for 3 days straight, and like how, and I'm still chewing on it. Like I still drive and I think about it. I think that we as women, we're kind of sold an idea as to like, even now, post Me Too movement, of how we should be handling everything that's happening. This is the first time I've ever seen someone inflict the physical harm on themselves that I think most women carry emotionally, that is as extreme as like what we feel, because it's always downplayed and it's always a little cute, but for it to be this intense,
It's
and
heavy.
then of course
But it's fun too. The movie's really fun.
I'm a body horror kind of girl.
Yeah.
Like Fly is in my top 5
Right.
movies. I think I showed you The Fly.
I think you
God,
did.
Fly rules so
Yeah.
hard.
And I love
Jeff
horror.
Goldblum, so hot in The Fly.
Is that his hottest? Is he?
Yeah.
Because I saw him in Independence Day the other day, and he's fucking hot in Independence
He's not in
Day.
Independence. No, but him in The Fly, where he's completely naked coming out of the vat.
Yeah.
That shot is like, damn. All right, I see
so
Goldblum.
to tie
I
it
got
back
you.
to Megalopolis, I think,
Goldblum should have.
and
been
I'm
in
sad to say
Megalopolis.
this with Francis Ford Coppola, it is unacceptable for millions of dollars to be spent when for a fraction of the budget, how much did you say? It was only 17 million?
Substance. Yeah, that's estimated.
So
You can have
one
incredible
fifth,
actors.
less than a fifth of Megalopolis.
You can have
Yeah.
incredible actors, barely any expenses on a set, incredible through line with story. You're telling a very important message and have it resonate the way that it does with all the camera work and editing and all these things. It is unacceptable in my opinion. And I don't know the logistics of like how much, and this is a genuine question, how much CGI is costing us nowadays? Because I know like
Oh, it's
that
it's-
like VFX
it's
artists are
bad.
trying to strike because like they were never paid a living wage.
Yeah,
And I think
there was
the only,
a report that Marvel like is ruining
like
the industry.
I feel like the only reason why we ever got a Jurassic Park was because we were screwing people over and paying people nothing. Because
Well,
no, because ILM was inventing a lot of that stuff
And
at that time.
the smart part about even 90s CGI was it was CGI to embellish
Yeah.
practical. As long as
and it
you
wasn't
were
the whole
using-
movie. It was very specific
as long
shots.
as you were using CGI and visual effects to embellish what is actually there, not only is it more affordable, but it looks better, it ages better over time. From everything that I have seen of like, I have tried to avoid as much as I can about The Substance because I'm very excited for it. I've heard nothing but like rave reviews from everybody that I care about, except for some like kind of takes that I saw online.
yeah,
that felt
it's
a
not
little
like
bit-
overwhelming praise, but
Yeah.
the people that love it adore it.
Yes. So I'm very excited for that. I've always really loved Demi Moore. So I'm
Dude.
excited for, like, this seems like her like late stage,
It's unreal.
mid stage. I don't want to call it late stage, mid stage, like career
I mean, she's
resurrection.
60.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, because I do want to comment on that, let me just say this for any like producers or people that are doing like deep research. And so you're going to these indie podcasters to like talk about film and you're doing data for whatever
we have a
movie
lot
you're
of those.
trying to plan.
Yeah.
So listen to this. Tell your producers to stop spending superfluous money on doo-doo garbage that's going to appeal to the masses, because we are here to prove with our
It's
dollar
for the fans.
that like it's not working for movies like that to continuously lose money and Marvel to continuously lose money. We do not want production after production annually every single year churning and burning like this. We want depth. Please.
Here's the thing is that I actually do feel like, and it goes back to something Cord Jefferson specifically said in his Oscar speech
Yeah.
for winning best
American Fiction.
original screenplay last year in the Oscars, which he's just like, studios, instead of making one $200 million movie, make 10 $20 million movies. Make 20
Please.
$10 million movies.
How much was RRR?
RR was like one of the biggest productions of India.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay,
makes it-
okay.
Yeah,
Pause.
but like something like this, something that has more meat on its bone. The problem is also that has to do with the substance, speaking without seeing it, and something like Megalopolis together is like we've kind of lost the art of screenwriting. It feels like we just aren't making. Well, not. I don't want to say that there aren't as many good writers as there used to be, because there are more diverse pools of writers than there ever have been. But it's also because of like the internetification of everything, and because it's so easy for anyone to write a screenplay, it's also so much more difficult for your screenplay to get noticed now than like before. Yeah. The only people who were writing movies were the people who were like moonlighting, working fucking bars in LA, but at least they were all kind of congregated in one area. Now we're getting all these stories from all over the world, from all these different experiences, but it makes it so much harder to stand out.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say about The Substance. I knew that I was going to like this movie. I didn't know that it was going to be like maybe one of my new favorite horror movies of all time. Like, I didn't know. I had never seen this director's other movie. It's called Revenge. I think it's from it was a long time ago, like maybe 7 years ago or something. So I was not familiar with her game. And as soon as this movie starts, it starts with such a bold confidence.
The first 5 minutes, I'm like, yeah.
10.
Yeah.
And it's you know, you mentioned Whiplash. It has like that
I've heard
feeling.
a lot of comparisons to Whiplash, which
It's that feeling of like someone just coming on and just being like, oh, this person knows exactly what they're doing and how to realize their vision.
I hope she makes like a really boring movie about the moon landing soon.
Hey,
Yo,
revisit
hey,
that movie.
back the fuck up about First Man.
Great
okay?
movie.
First Man rules.
Plays
okay?
really well.
Folks,
Yeah.
we got him.
Plays really well on the rewatch.
He was fish hooking you.
Here's the thing.
Oh, bait.
Mhm.
Fish hooking.
Is that not the slogan?
Fish hooking you.
I don't know.
It has like this.
Later tonight, I am going
love
to fish hook you though. So Ernie's going to be gone for a couple hours.
It has a really expert handle on like what it's trying to do, the way it sort of builds that oppressive tension.
If you have mental health struggles, please do not go to see that movie unless you go to therapy first.
Right.
Mm.
I mean, the idea is, I won't get into so many specifics with like the themes and everything, but the ideas on its mind, it's like it does things in a very bold and noticeable and extremely obvious way. Like I made a letterbox list of all the movies that The Substance is not only influenced by, but directly like
Nodding.
not in very, very overt and obvious
And
ways. Like the movie is not trying to be subtle.
This is the
at
last
all.
thing that we'll say because we got to move on because these guys have not seen it yet. Please invite me on. I'm in the other room every podcast. I'm literally
To get into a spoiler talk.
I think we got to have
First
Zach on for. He's begging.
Zach
for it.
said like this is
Yes,
one of my
bring
more
another
Substance,
white
Megalopolis,
male
double
on
app.
to the substance
Hey, I think he's
conversation.
Italian.
But here's my thing:
We'll have
is
a
that
substance
it
party.
is
We'll
a
all take the substance.
female director
Yeah.
bringing in these predominantly white, famous male, like dominated thriller, psycho, like thriller horror films, and nodding in a way where it's like, yeah, you guys could do it. I can do it too. And I can do it even better.
And I can flip it on its head and like ridicule
and
it in a way.
dissect it and also reflect how fucked up it is that women are subjected to this world.
You mentioned Demi Moore. Margaret Qualley is also great. Dennis Quaid is great. He's a piece of shit. He plays a piece of shit.
Is that Reagan?
Reagan himself.
Oh, yeah, wow, cool.
Another thing I'll mention, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I feel good having my wife here by my side.
Yeah.
But my situation, my health situation that I've been going through this year, it hit me so hard with this movie. Listeners, if you've been watching, you can probably tell that I've lost all my hair throughout the last couple months. Like the body image dysmorphia, self-loathing aspect of this movie. There's like way more specifics that I won't get into that are like very, very specific to what I've been going through. On a very personal level, it's very intense for me. You guys are looking at me like I'm like transforming into the substance
the
right
thing
now.
that's so crazy is I thought you were going to talk about how gorgeous the naked bodies were, and I was like
I thought
ready.
You were about to be
I
like,
was
honey, Margaret Qualley, she is my hall
I had
pass.
notes. I was like, no, actually, I know who his hall pass is.
I've been
It's not her, but-
avoiding bringing up the fact that I have cancer for months.
When, by
But-
the way, we could have been milking it so hard.
Yeah, God.
Yeah,
We
the
should have been.
clickbait.
You're just now bringing it up. Oh.
We should have been charging the Run P guy like quadruple.
We'll do like a top 5 cancer movies, but
Yeah,
It'll-
50-50 watch through.
it'll become I gotta start like getting into it because it's gonna become relevant when we talk about this fucking Florence Pugh Andrew
I
Garfield
can't.
movie that's coming out. Have you guys seen
Is
the
that a
trailer?
cancer movie?
Yeah.
I didn't know
Does
that was
he
a
have cancer?
movie.
She does.
Well, it's
She
a
does.
mystery.
I
They're
was gonna
playing
say,
it. They might fish hook you.
It'd be funny
They
if
might
he
fish
did
hook.
because he listen. I don't mean to be a Hollywood gossip, but bro, his
mother.
it would appear he's taken a recent trip to Turkey.
Oh, his
If
hairline.
you know what I mean. He's looking real thick up there.
Oh.
You guys should have pretended that you were like shocked that I was
Wait, what?
breaking the news.
Can
Well,
we
I'm
take
get-
that
that
I was
again?
sick.
First of all, it's very brave of you to bring that up. I think we have to definitely circle back with that when you do the actual dissection of it
Of the substance.
because there is obviously a way that we want to feel, but how much of how we want to feel, how we look, is being informed by how people perceive how we should look, and that is the movie.
Yeah. It's specifically the idea of looking in the mirror and not liking what you see. That specific thing is what this, and I think the best scene of the movie is Demi Moore just acting her ass off in a moment of that feeling. And, you know, the female aspect of it, of like what the beauty standards in Hollywood are towards women and the idea of like beauty that's sold through the media, that's something that's core to the movie. But since I'm not a woman, like to us, we're told that we are more powerful when we get older. It's the complete inverse, it's the complete opposite. But the experience that I've been going through past 6 months of going to chemotherapy every single week and watching like my physical appearance get affected from it, culminating in watching this movie, unforgettable, unreal experience. So it is a very personal thing. But I had to say it because it's like, this is going to be one of my favorite movies of the year. And it's directly tied to this thing that I've been going through. And it's going to get to the end of the year. And when we talk about the year in film and the year in music and TV, like it's going to tie in.
Yeah.
My health
I
experience
feel
is
like a
going to
good
tie
amount,
in.
a good amount of media. You'll be like,
gonna-
oh yeah, this was a cancer album.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
gonna
like-
tie. It's gonna tie into
Well,
everything. It's gonna tie into everything. So I was trying to figure out like when the best time. I was thinking like maybe Castaway would be like a good time
When you're just doing
to
a
talk
solo-
about it. You know, it's like, oh, being stranded on an island is kind of the same thing as having cancer. But yeah, I've been putting it off.
The
So
thing is,
I feel like
the thing that I love
having
most,
wife on.
the thing that I love most
Good
about
time.
you is that I've learned very early on, because at first I was like, oh my God, this guy, all he ever talks about is movies. I don't know if I can deal with this, because I like didn't even
I
have a
really
TV.
thought you were gonna be like, God, he won't shut up about his cancer.
No, no. And then
Get over
and then I
yourself.
realized around like 6 months to a year into our relationship, I realized like that's how he processes emotions.
Yeah.
And sometimes art can depict an emotion better than words can in your own experiences. And I think Ernest communicates through that medium. The art helps him process things. So now I've even caught myself.
Is the dog bothering you?
He's eating mulch. I've even caught myself using film to communicate certain emotions to you, and us being able to like better understand
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. And you'll
Because of that.
anticipate me doing it before I even do it too. You're like, you're about to bring up a movie, aren't you? It's like,
And that's
know me.
really and so my thing is Megalopolis. My thing is
it always comes
Is
back.
that-
have to come back to
It's-
Megalopolis.
no, I just bring it up because my biggest pet peeve with not just like the movies that you guys cover on the podcast sometimes, but just like the general populace of movies that are made today is that there's so many stories to tell. And the ones that are getting overwhelmingly funded are like schlop that I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's for the fans.
I'm like angry. I resent. And once in a while, you get this breath of fresh air with the substance that you're like, oh,
Megalopolis.
like you could have literally 3 rooms that this whole movie is shot out of, and you can fucking tell
Well,
a deeper story.
You can't let the now
Then-
be the destroy the forever.
Okay, but then
Okay. So let's get to our main event of the episode, the substance. Full spoiler discussion. We want to do a full spoiler discussion? You guys hadn't seen it last time I brought it up. Now you guys have. I don't know if you want to share any spoiler-free thoughts before we really dig into it. I got off all my spoiler-free takes last time we did an episode.
I mean, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I had a good time watching it. Like it's pretty as advertised. I think that I don't know. If you are sort of being scared off of watching it because what you're hearing is that it's so fucking disgusting and brutal.
It's not Terrifier 3.
That's the thing. So there are 2 separate things when people talk about something being like gross, you know, like a movie being like disgusting. This isn't one of those horror movies where the entire vibe of the movie is scary, where like every second you're like, I'm about to get scared.
Yeah.
It's kind of quite the opposite. In fact, like a lot of the movie is not in like the scary zone. You're not having to worry. And so I think a lot of people are sort of hesitant to watch this that don't need to be. That said, you do have to be okay with like some wild shit happening.
Yeah.
Like some really,
Otherwise,
really-
you're going to be covering
Yeah.
your eyes
There's-
like half the movie.
it's just there's visually some super insane, like brutal shit. Absolutely. It's just my bigger concern with like horror stuff is like, am I gonna be just like feeling like scared for 2 hours straight? And
Yeah.
that's not the case here.
You're like elevated heart rate, like flight or
It's
flight.
really not horror. Like I would say that like there's not really
It
much
is a
gore
body.
in
It
the-
is a body horror movie.
Well, so it is body horror, but even like the splatter core part is
It's
the
funny.
last 20, 30 minutes of the movie.
and it's fun and
like
entertaining.
It is for the most part, it is more in that soft sci-fi realm. It's very much like close to reality and just kind of making you like live in this world, this sci-fi that's like
but
kind
there
of
are
close to
there
our
are
world, but
gross
it's-
images early on.
Yeah. There's one sequence that is gross. I would say I didn't really find any other sequences to be like grotesque or anything like that until we kind of round into form of the third act, which by the way, when this movie wants to go for it, it fully goes for it. And that is like one of the best things I can say about this movie is that like it is very confident with what it is. It very much like it's something that I've never seen any of Coralie Farget. Is that her name?
I think it's Coralie Farget.
Yeah,
I believe.
I have not seen
Fucking
Revenge.
French people.
Jesus,
one of the
Christ.
best letterbox reviews of this movie is we need to make sure French people don't make any more movies until we figure out what the fuck is going on.
Okay, that's good.
Remember Titan?
Titan is great, man. Those some good shit right there. And then like on the other end, it's just like The Taste of Things, which is like one of the most beautiful movies about food.
Oh yeah, that was French.
Yeah.
No,
I will say I did really love this movie a lot. I think that booing this movie is like the tone is very spot on. I do really appreciate that Coralie is like someone who is very like on the pulse and has a specific style that you can feel. And will kind of make you look at images that until you do not want to look at them anymore and you're forced to look at them some more. I appreciate that her style for that. Demi Moore. I started the other day making my long list for our critics vote.
Yeah.
Everything. Demi Moore is my number one for
Yep.
best actress of the year right now. Because I think that it is incredible what she's doing.
I think it is the best performance I've seen this year.
I think you might be right. Like it might be my favorite,
phenomenal.
especially if like it is one of those things where you take a little bit of like the weight and the baggage of like an actor's career in it. I think that like this is kind of one of those performances that like Demi Moore was truly like born to play at this late stage of her career as like this beautiful woman who is grappling with this younger version of herself. And did she fully live the best version of that could have been? Even if she did, is she just still like yearning to get back to that point? And my other like favorite piece about this thing is the production design. It is like very stripped down. I don't know what the budget ended up actually being for this movie.
I think it's around 15.
15. Okay.
It's sub 20.
And I'm sure that like at least a few of those mil are just going to Demi. So probably like the actual like production design of this movie is probably only like maybe 5 to 7 mil or so.
17, it says 17.5.
I mean, this is a movie that's fully taking advantage of the hand that's being dealt, of making things that have a very specific look and a very specific style to them that feels both in concert with like what has become a little bit hot, what has become a little bit brat today, if you will. The brat greens that are in here and stuff like that feel very timely.
The substance itself is brat.
Well, also there is a timelessness to this movie that I really appreciate a lot.
So if you didn't tune in last week, I basically just gushed over this movie. Lee and I saw it together. We went on a date outing to see it, and our minds were completely blown. Mm-hmm. This is the one movie that is contending for the top spot of the year for me between this and Dune 2. I'd probably put Challengers up there as well. I'd feel like between those three is probably the top spot for me. But man, I could not get enough of this movie.
Okay. An edit of the Challengers poster where the two guys in Challengers are Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, and Zendaya is Dennis Quaid.
Munching on the shrimp. just like
sucking down.
Just a thought. If anyone's got some free time.
So let's get into spoilers. If you haven't seen The Substance, huge recommend.
I'm going in muted because I know how much of an avid fan you were. I absolutely love this movie. This is easily one of my favorite movies of the year because I have a lot of in-depth thoughts of this movie and how all of its ideas that it has to it. But I want to save those for a spoiler discussion because this is something that like I think that you should go in knowing as little as possible.
And I think the trailers have done an amazing job of just hiding like all the goodies that are in this movie.
Well, the trailers show like the central idea that is there, which is just like older woman takes a substance in order to be this younger version of themselves. And I think
that's the log line. The IMDb log line is a fading celebrity takes a black market drug, a cell replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other. Well, let's just get into spoilers and then.
Last chance. Get out now if you haven't seen it or.
So my first,
Spoilers.
This isn't a super spoiler. It's sort of like really, but I think another big piece of this movie, if you haven't seen it and you're sort of wondering what the vibe is that this is taking place in a very absurd world.
Yeah.
It's not even.
She's auditioning for the New Year show.
The New Year's show while
the
she has
billboard
like,
is the New Year show.
she has like a daytime yoga show.
Yeah,
She's
like
basically
that's
getting
what I'm
like
saying.
the Taylor Swift
So
treatment.
the fading celebrity's name is Elizabeth Sparkle.
Yeah.
Very wow platinum of her.
And she is famous for having like an 80s style aerobics TV show.
Yeah. Very like Jane Fonda-esque.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she is which you'd be like, oh yeah, so it's like a show for old people. So like, you know, if she gets replaced by someone new, it's a whole new type of show. No. The new version of the show
Just ass.
is still 80s style aerobics, but it's just like zooming in on like ass.
Yeah.
So
Ass and titties.
like at one point the Margaret Qualley goes on a late night talk show that is called The Show.
Yeah.
If you look at like his mug. So we're like existing in a world where you don't have to think about logistics at
Right.
all, because the
It's
logistics,
just the metaphor. It's just
yeah,
the symbol.
the logistics of like the substance company is great. Like there's nothing to. You don't want to think about that for more than 2 seconds because
Right.
none of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
Why they're doing it?
Yeah.
None of it. You don't need to.
What
think,
is the advantage of any kind?
is she paying? I don't think we don't know.
How much is the substance? Is it $10?
And so because of that,
Covered under insurance?
because it is so absurdist and like this viewpoint it has on media, this movie really could have come out any time in the past like 30 years.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not
It doesn't lean heavily on technology.
no, modern technology is not important. One of the biggest visual symbols is a billboard in this
Right.
movie.
Yes.
Like this could have come out like in a wide swath of years. And it really has that feel to it. Like it feels like something that exists like within its own vacuum, almost in the way that like a Lynch movie does.
Yeah.
Like it's just like this is just like
Very Lynch.
yeah, this is like it's like dream logic. You know what I mean? You cannot CinemaSins it because that's not the point.
It's fully is a show. It is a movie, and I could see why this point specifically would frustrate people. That it kind of is a movie that's all metaphor in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. Like
Yeah.
it is only about the thing that saves it is that it's not just about one thing. It is about a bunch of different things.
It keeps unfolding itself
I
over
think
and
that's
over.
the one thing, and I've been kind of racking my brain to know if I love this or if I don't like it or not. But this is a movie that kind of it will insist upon itself, and it will continue to show
It's like
the same
very
thing
redundant.
over and over. It's so many redundancies.
Yeah.
It is redundancies. It's redundant shots. And in a lot of the stuff, it feels very purposeful. Like we're just going to keep showing ass. We're going to keep
Over
showing this
and
naked
over and
body
over.
until like you feel bad. You feel like you're Dennis Quaid ogling at the screen here. That stuff I feel is effective. There's also another side of it where it almost feels like there is no trust in the audience to follow things, where it's just like
That's been one of the knocks.
the continuous
against it.
zoom
Yeah.
in on like you were great to like you are amazing and
Yeah.
like a lot like just the things that were
Remember you are one.
yeah
All that.
I mean there's some of that and everything, or like even the point of a fun loser guy from high school that like we have to show his face glowing up on the cloud. It's like you are always so beautiful. Like, I like that style and things, but it is a little bit of like it's almost so handholdy that like there was a little bit of like I got it.
Yeah.
Like I'm good. I'm following what's happening. You don't need to like remind me of what happened here already.
So yeah, that criticism I absolutely can like sympathize with. I love the movie. I had a great time either way, but I think that the reason that that's super valid is because this isn't a 90-minute movie or 100-minute movie.
Yeah, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, so
it could
it's
have been trimmed down a bit.
yeah, exactly. So it's really easy to point out what didn't necessarily have to be there if you're trying to shorten it a little bit.
But on the bright side, or on the flip side of things, I am glad that it is that long, because I think if you are going to trim this, and like if this got bought by a major studio and not Mubi, then we are trimming up the last act. We're trimming up all of the splatter
Monster Elisu.
Yeah.
You're not getting rid of Monster Elisu. Here's what I'll say in defense of that. Incredibly early on in this movie, like within the first few minutes, first of all, the opening of this movie, I was so on board. Like the first shot is a yolk splitting into two yolks, and then you get this extended sequence of the star on the Hollywood Walk being built. Like that is what I made a letterbox list, as I do, of movies that I thought about in relationship to the substance. Whiplash is on this list because of the sheer confidence on display within the opening few seconds of the film. Like immediately you're like, oh shit, like this is a director who knows exactly what they want to accomplish, right? So I'm already fully on board. Then we get this Dennis Quaid sequence with the shrimp. There is a close-up of a fly, right? The fly. Come on.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we are in the Shining bathroom. Like literally we're just, it is painfully obvious, incredibly obvious what this movie is doing. It is the opposite of subtle from the beginning.
Yes.
It is showing you like, hey, The Fly.
Yeah, these are the influences.
Stanley Kubrick. Yeah. Like, come on. We are not even trying to hide it.
Yeah.
So by the time you get to these things that are so repetitive and redundant, I was already in the mode of expecting the movie to be not subtle at all.
Yeah. Well,
so it wasn't an issue.
Also, generally the reason like I would consider it very watchable despite all that is because it is all looking really good.
Every shot, every single shot.
Yeah, it's well shot. It's well conceived. Like the locations are well conceived. She does almost like a Kubrick-y thing where the layout of her apartment is impossible.
No, you could not map it. I had tried to think about the hallway from her living room
to the bathroom,
and then also to the doorway that's over there. It doesn't make any sense at all.
It only makes sense if she has like a penthouse where it's the whole top floor, but yet she has like
it's like the corner.
She has like a really like dumb like middle class seeming guy living across from her,
right across in a very narrow hallway.
That is the Run P moment, by the way.
That guy.
Whenever we're talking to that guy, we don't need we don't need that guy.
It was just to show another gross guy. Like that was it.
Right. When he realizes it's Margaret Qualley, he's like, oh, what?
I enjoy, as far as like, beating you over the head goes, I enjoy a lot of the lines that the stupid guys have. I agree. That guy is worse than I love the guy she knew from high school.
That's so good.
That guy's great.
His lines are hilarious.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed seeing him. Another redundancy thing that I did enjoy actually was, as opposed to like, I think there are a couple like just like hard cuts to like a flashback. I love when the flashback is, it's sort of like clouded into like a specific part of the frame.
Yeah.
Just because that's a cool look.
Vignette.
Yeah. It just looks great. I love the way it looks. You know who did that literally last week is Survivor.
A close in on the frame like that, like a vignette?
Just like showing flashbacks like in different parts of a frame with like someone who's having the flashbacks in the
right.
frame.
Oh yeah.
Which Survivor's never done that before. They're very bored over there, clearly. But like watching
I would love to edit Survivor.
Watching it, I was like, are they doing The Substance right now?
They're doing The Substance.
It was so funny. but yeah, there are certain redundancy things that are really, really enjoyable in this. I think
It's so obvious. Like the movie is not trying to be subtle
I
at
know.
all.
I think the only reason that I could have some issue with it is because it does eat up time.
Yeah.
yeah,
and-
the time.
But it is a thing, and that's kind of where I'm coming back to where I'm like of two minds of it, because it is redundant to a point that I think that some of it's effective and some of it isn't as effective. I also do think that this movie does have great pace, though. Like, it's not something that
I
really
did not feel the
drags,
length.
even if it is longer.
I mean, the
Now, could this have been 2 hours? Maybe, but like
the time issue is tough to defend because, like, yeah, you could definitely say you can trim out those extra 15, 20 minutes. But I feel like the redundancy, the obvious callbacks, like literally like all these movies that it's referencing.
Yeah.
The other movies I have written down, like movies like The Thing and Requiem for a Dream and Pi. And
friend of the pod, Colin, like pointed out, like there's a lot of Frank Henenlotter and Brian Yunza in this stuff of like,
Yeah.
while we're talking about like specifically not just the like body horror aspect, but a lot of body dysmorphia
Right.
stuff. Like that's really huge in those movies, and that's kind of something that is kind of body dysmorphia is one of the central things that is at the crux of this movie, and is the I would say like the central point that it gets the most right. Like that whole feeling of just
I feel like there's a lot of points that this movie gets right.
Oh, well, I think there's a lot, but like specifically this feeling of just like looking yourself in the mirror and not liking
Yeah.
what you see, just
Yes.
being unhappy with what
Absolutely.
is looking back at you. That is the thing that like most resonated with me while watching this movie, and I think is like kind of at its center core. It very much is a movie about like the woman, the female experience
Right.
with that specifically. But I do think that there is a lot there about just in general the human experience.
Yeah, aging.
And
Yes.
it's something that we all gotta go
Demi
through.
Moore is 60 years old.
Yeah.
She looks
She's playing 50 and she's
Amazing.
watched, which is so funny.
she looks fucking
Yeah.
amazing. It is so sad. We'll get to it in a second, like what I think is the best scene in the movie, which is the getting ready for
The
the,
makeup
date.
scene.
Well,
Yes,
so
yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. Also, is obviously that this isn't baked into the movie so much necessarily, but that's such a universally like human moment.
Yeah.
That like watching it, I was almost like, damn, there could be more of that here. Even though I know that's not.
I feel like that is the high point of the movie.
That's
though.
what I'm saying. It's like
because there is not more of it. It stands out, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
it super does, because it's an experience that I think we've all had, especially women, obviously, but like the never feeling satisfied with how you're looking to the point that you just like don't even want to go out.
Yeah.
Like,
But she does it, isn't it like 3 times
Yeah.
that she completely takes off all her makeup and reapplies?
yeah,
it?
and
Yeah.
it's more like anxiety inducing than anything else
Yeah.
in the movie, like
Right.
because she's playing it great. It's really well directed, and it's
The cuts to the clock
Yeah.
as it's just getting later. And
Exactly.
later.
And
it's heartbreaking.
and it's just a very human observation that to the point that I think maybe if there was a little more of that, it would have been nice. Because I don't know, we're getting so much flash in this movie that it's really easy to just like, you're just going with the vibe of it, and you're like,
But I feel like
we're cooked.
the flash is part of the point. Like this is what I'm trying to get at, is that you have all these overlapping instances of redundancy and obviousness and lack of subtlety, and these incredibly like telegraph callbacks to all these other movies, Lynch, Kubrick, Fincher, like there's a whole list, right? Everything that this is doing is creating this feeling, this assault on the senses. This movie is incredibly oppressive, and that feeling of repetition is part of the context and the tone of this heightened world that we are in.
you're right.
And I understand. I really, there's not a lot of pushback that I'll give on the idea of trimming out a few minutes out of the movie, but the idea of like this movie refusing to cut away when other directors would, when it would make sense to cut away and it doesn't, it's to induce that feeling of oppression and assault, specifically in the sense of what the media does to perpetuate this idea of beauty standards. Like that's the real crux that this movie exists in, is like all of these roads, they all intersect at that point of that feeling of discomfort that we are inundated with this image. Like we're not born with this idea of like knowing that at some point you're not beautiful anymore and you don't matter and you only have value if you look a certain way. We are taught that through the media, through the images
whenever
that we are
you're
shown.
told that you are disposable.
Right. That's not a natural thing in the world. That's something that has to be taught to us. And that's the feeling that is conveyed in this film. I think it is so artistically, like, just expertly communicated.
Mm-hmm.
It is unlike anything I've ever seen. I cannot think of another movie that does that creates that feeling and is able to maintain it so well in tandem with the horror thriller aspect of it. Like as you're getting worked up about that and you're feeling frustrated and you're feeling like we need to move on to the next thing, to me, that feeling is right alongside like, oh, she's turning into a weird witch finger lady and we're cutting into her spine and we're climbing out of her back. And like all of these like more genre type stuff is happening right alongside the thematic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's perfect to me. It's unbelievable.
It's also like, I don't mean this as a slight at all. It's really cool that she's doing all of this. It almost feels like there's one hand tied behind the movie's back because like the dialogue is so limited in a way. Like it's
another world.
Yeah,
it's not our world. It's not our world's dialogue.
It's just
and everybody is like a caricature of
exactly.
themselves.
Everyone
like
is.
Dennis Quaid is the worst guy,
and even like Demi, like every single character is speaking so stupidly.
Yeah. Well, and Margaret Qualley, Demi. I know that they're the same person, but she just comes out and immediately is like, "Well, fuck that other me." Like I'm just immediately moving on and gonna make this other person pay for it. Like it is kind of like a thing where. I think that you could I don't feel this way, but like a negative thing that you could say is like you can kind of feel where the movie is going, like in a lot of the things because people are such caricatures of themselves.
You're waiting for everything that happens in the last act. You are ready for it.
Yeah.
It's almost like the end of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where you're just being edged for like 2 hours.
That's what I'm saying. I don't mean that as a negative.
Loaded.
Yes,
cocked and loaded.
And you're just like, when are we gonna fucking shoot that thing?
It's
like,
just,
let me see this.
That's the other thing that reminds me of Lynch in like, you know, a complimentary way, but also it's the reason I had a hard time connecting with his stuff for a while is because like the way that people are talking is not it makes less sense with Lynch. It makes more sense for someone who literally like English is her second language,
right?
That everyone's talking as if that's the case. But like
Lynch, everybody talks like this acquaintance that's now in your dream. That is the thing. And this movie has a little bit of that where it's just very much like it's that feeling of being in a nightmare, but it's before the scary thing has happened. And you just have this like dread in your stomach of like, oh God, something's bad is going to happen here. And like nobody around you is acting quite right. But you're just kind of stuck in it. You're just there for the ride and you just kind of have to wait it out until
it's the scene in Blue Velvet when the guy is singing into the light.
Yeah.
There's just strange people in the background.
And woman starts sobbing into your arms.
And it's just like the fact that I don't know, the reason that is so good in both cases with Lynch and with her, I think more so with this movie is that like alongside the really stupid dialogue, which is stupid like on purpose for the most part, like you're getting visual mastery, like just absolutely
every shot
gorgeous, like incredibly edited. It's all perfect. Like it's absolute perfection. So you're never doubting like the steadiness of the hands. You know what I mean? Like if you were getting these lines in a movie that looks like pretty good,
you'd probably be on your way out.
You'd be completely out. Yeah, 100% because the lines are so dumb. Right. But it's part of the point. And also, you know, like I saw one Letterboxd review that I thought was funny, even though I don't really agree with it, which is like this movie has a lot of moments that are like, you know, the Inglourious Bastards fingers scene of like, tell me you're not
realization.
Really, well, no, tell me you're not really American. For example, when the beginning
because
Hollywood,
it's an LA story.
the beginning Hollywood star sequence when it snows is one thing.
Yeah.
Which I did clock. I was like, so, but then the thing is, you're watching a movie that's so fucking insane, and they never even
so
say the
removed.
words LA. You know what I mean?
It's so removed from reality that it's like I don't know.
No, exactly, and that's
what this world.
well.
is.
So that's
It's not our
ultimately
world.
why like all these negative reviews like are pissing me off, is because like, did you watch the movie after that? Because like, if you're gonna watch it with that same critical eye of like, well, that wouldn't happen, then like everything is wrong.
Yeah.
You
let's
fucking idiot.
Let's just poke holes into every little
Oh, so you just go get your Ozempic from an alleyway?
I don't see a lot of shows that are like that one. You know, like it's no, like none of it's
Yeah.
like hyper realism. It's
I-
the exact opposite.
So
I
the
think that
the
it-
drug addiction point, I want to put a pin in because that is something I wrote down.
About like about drug addiction, or about like the fashion drugs of like an Ozempic?
We can-
and things
we can
like
talk
that. Because
about
those are
both.
kind of two different things that the movie kind of does both of. I think I personally, and I know like going into it, I heard a lot of people use like the like Ozempic Mounjaro kind of thing as like a catalyst for what this movie is. I really viewed this much more as a metaphor for party drugs and stuff like that, and much more getting into that lifestyle. Like this is much more
Holding on
akin,
to youth.
well, and it's much more akin to a party drug that you never want the party to end than
Right.
it is something that is
And you're-
just like designed for like, oh, I want to like lose weight and feel not be able to eat for 3 days.
I'm imagining, Hunter, you know, when you were a kid and you got like you got caught with weed and your dad gave you that funny lecture.
Yeah, my dad made me write down all my dreams on a piece of paper and then lit them on fire and says, "This is what you do. This is what you do every time you spark up a joint. I swear to God,
So
Hiram Matthew Mobley."
I'm
You
imagining
needed the substance.
if your dad caught you like doing like Molly or something, he'd be like, "Have you ever seen The Substance? What you're doing, you're extracting that
You're
Molly
Margaret
from your
Qualley
older
right now.
self.
Yeah,
You are killing your
dying.
future self
I'd be like-
for benefit right now."
I'd be like,
But
"Damn,
that's-
that's just
but
crazy." I'm
that's
hosting the
true.
New Year's ball though.
That's the truth,
Yeah.
though. That is literally what this movie is trying to tell you, is that when you're young, you make decisions that don't impact your younger self. They
Mhm.
impact your older self. And that's part of what this movie is about. That's one of the
but
layers
remember,
of it.
You are one.
Remember, you are one.
Mhm.
It's I'm not sure that one was communicated enough times.
I
they say
actually
that
I
one
left it. I
enough?
was like,
Did they say
were
it
they
ever?
two?
Are they one?
Were they two? I can get that.
It's so Harry, a friend of the pod, who
He
like
got really hung up on that one.
he liked this movie, like wasn't crazy about it, but did very much like it. But one thing he said was very true. I don't even know if he meant it positively or negatively, which is you could just watch this movie on mute.
Yeah.
And there's not a single thing that you would not understand. You would
Yes.
get it all because it's
Yeah.
visually communicated perfectly.
And guess what? Movies are mostly visual.
And
so,
well, and also like, I don't know. I was saying after we watched it, like I was saying how jealous I was of her abilities as a filmmaker
Mhm.
because of that. Because like when I would write scripts, so much of them would just be dependent on like the lines being said.
bogged down in the dialogue.
Yeah, and it wouldn't even necessarily matter where this was taking place or
there's
like
not
how
a
it
lot of
looked.
dialogue in this movie.
Well, no,
honestly.
and there's a reason, but it's so someone who starts with the visual and then works, sort of backwards, not in like a Mission Impossible type of way, because those movies have way too much dialogue, if you're asking me. But like,
it's because they have to. It's a cleanup job.
yeah, but it's just in a way of like she is thinking, okay, here's what could happen next. What would be the most interesting looking thing?
Yeah.
Where like I think a great example of this is when Margaret Qualley is beating the shit out of like demented grandma
Yes.
Demi Moore, and there's one moment in particular where Margaret kicks her across a whole room, and we have not established any like supernatural abilities. It doesn't make
Right.
any sense. We don't even know if she's stronger than a normal person, but you can tell that as a filmmaker, she was just like, what would look the craziest right now? What would like fit the vibe of this?
But also
that
the
was-
feeling. It's also the feeling of hurting yourself.
Mhm.
That scene is also like tapping into something so primal about like, I want to hurt myself. I want to inflict harm on myself. Because remember, you are one.
Wait, what?
So she's actually when she punches the
She's
the
punching
lady,
herself.
she's punching
oh
herself.
my god, I didn't get that.
And it's that it is continuously trying to let you sit in that horrible feeling of that self-loathing.
Yeah,
Well,
I
also
think that
just also just like sitting in the feeling of not just self-loathing but like stupidity, because you're watching Quali and you're like, she does not understand this premise one bit.
she's not getting that we are.
The you are one callbacks are for her, right? She could use them.
Demi's not getting, she's not passing along that message to her. No, but to your point about like the way that the movie looks, and it's something that going back to like your comparison to Whiplash and something, this movie felt a lot like somebody's first film. And I was almost surprised to see that Coraline has made a couple movies before this. Now, granted, it's been 7 years since she made Revenge.
Since Revenge. I haven't seen it. Have you seen it?
I have not
And
seen
also
it either.
she's still, relatively young
She's
for
still
a feature
relatively-
filmmaker.
But the thing is that
like
like
40 something.
this is one of those movies where like it's the reason why a lot of times I feel like, especially
48,
like
almost 50.
when there's a director who I really love, I end up kind of clinging on a lot of times to some of their early works, especially when they are like people who actually write their screenplays too, because you can tell that they've spent decades racking not just like the story that they want to make,
The frames.
but certain visuals
Yeah.
in their brain that they could not get out. Like I guarantee the idea of a woman laying naked on a bathroom floor with her spine cut open
Yes.
lived in her brain for like decades before she ever captured it on film. So it's one of those things, and this movie has so many of those moments. The kicking is just one of those things where it's like, how can I articulate like this vision that I've been sitting with in my head for all of these years and get that out into the screen so that audiences can see it? And I think that is kind of the thing that resonates the most with this movie.
Well,
for me.
lesser
That it's-
things too, just like simple things like putting the newspaper on the window, covering the window, the billboard.
The looking out, and again, this goes to like, this is a made up world here that everything is a metaphor of like, I have this one like incredible penthouse apartment, and then there's just a fucking billboard that's right in front of me that's facing right in that just happens to only show
It's
me
very,
and my life on it.
It's very Gatsby.
Yes,
The
yeah, it's
eyes
the
of
green
Dr.
light.
T.J.
I'll
Eckelberg.
I'll add it to the letterbox list.
Thank you.
Which Great Gatsby? Which one do you guys put on there?
Should I? I'll
You
do
got
the
both of
I'll do the
them?
Leo.
Okay.
So the other biggest read on this movie that to me was like the second most obvious one beyond like the body image read is the motherhood angle, that this is about having a kid.
Oh, this is great. I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought.
Yeah,
about
where
this.
like as a woman having a child, you are physically sacrificing the way you look forever in order to have a smaller version of yourself who you then have to see grow up and like become, the youthful, like adored, sought after version of you.
Some ways living the dreams that you never got to
Exactly.
live
And
because you gave
well,
that up to
resent
be a
each
parent.
other.
Yeah.
Well, that really comes into focus when she looks like a grandma and is obsessed with cooking. I mean, come on, you know what I mean? Like it's very,
and connect that. That's good.
yeah, like it's super, super evident. Like there's a huge motherhood angle here, which makes a lot of sense because we're talking about like generally the plight of a woman, and how they look. Like becoming a mother is one of the biggest sacrifices that you could make to your concept of self and also your aesthetic self as a woman at the same time. And so it is, it's super, super evident throughout the movie. But yeah, first of all, I love the cookbook that Quaid gives her where he's like, you're old, right? So like
here's a fucking
yeah.
we all pitched in to get this one for
Yeah.
you. It's like a basic ass cookbook.
It's a
that you
cookbook
get.
where every recipe is disgusting. It's all like liverwurst.
What was it like? Eviscerate the turkey.
Yeah, and I love it aesthetically. It's
Your
great
hand in
too.
there.
It could just make sense on the aesthetic terms because like, and even like obvious symbology, because at one point she literally is like making like a turducken type thing where she's shoving one bird into another bird. But like other than that, this is like the traditional role of what happens with older woman is she's at home cooking a shitload of food and like letting go of herself, watching her younger self on TV and being like, I gave you that. I gave you everything.
Demi Moore, insane in that scene. Like
It's
incredible. Like that is the moment where I'm thinking like, I think this is the best. I don't know many Demi Moore movies, but this is by far like the best thing she's ever done.
It's better than her in A Few Good Men.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's
100%.
Yeah.
It's not her fault in A Few Good Men. But like something like Ghost or Striptease, that was really like, that was peak.
I need to see Striptease.
Was 90 early
Ghost is okay.
mid 90s Demi Moore.
Lee might have some thoughts on Ghost. I think she might be. I think she might be awake. Maybe I should go get her.
I did want to say, as far as like everything that Demi Moore is doing and everything, like that whole other aspect, we talked specifically about like the substance abuse angle and everything. I think this is also just a beautiful movie about just like pure depression, about just like that feeling of just being like unable to find joy in things that once gave you joy. And it's just that whole point of like, I can't even go outside today. I just need to just sit here and just watch fucking basic cable game shows for a week straight so that I can go back to another life that I don't even get to live.
Well, I think the addiction part is part of that.
It's tied into
too.
that.
I mean, what I wrote down is that this is a very, like, I don't know what it's like to be like a full on junkie, but
it's literally hooking people up to an IV and letting them
people
die.
Yeah. Like I know people who have struggled with addiction, and I've seen it like firsthand. And I feel like this movie, there's a lot of movies that do this, but this movie gets the torture part of being an addict incredibly well. And again, I brought it up earlier. Requiem for a Dream, I think, is probably like one of the most visceral depictions of that idea of like wanting to refuse the high.
Yeah.
But you are physically incapable of it. Right. And that costs, like, what is the true cost of that addiction? And I feel like the depression part is in tandem with that, because it's that idea of, you know, nobody wants to be depressed.
Yeah.
You're not choosing it. You're not. I feel like people try to conflate addiction with like a choice, like you're choosing to be an addict, and that's not what.
But it truly is a physical dependency, on a certain on something at a certain point. It's crazy. It's something that, and this also, I do want to give credit. We gotta give Margaret Qualley her flowers too.
Yeah,
as much
she's
as her
not the shining star. She's not the.
She's not the
Hollywood.
She's not
Walk
Elizabeth
of Fame.
Sparkle, but I do think that she is awesome in the movie. I just gotta say, Margaret Qualley's last 12 months,
Kinds of Kindness.
So Poor Things. She was in Drive Away Dolls, Kinds of Kindness, and The Substance. Drive Away Dolls not a great movie, but it's, again, like, she is making such interesting choices as an actor that, like, as Leftover stands, we just got to be happy that, like, just seeing her out here actually fully living her best life.
I heard that Justin Theroux was considered for this role, though, and I wish it was him.
Did you actually? Do you know the original Dennis Quaid? Ernest just walked away, so I might have to bust this out to him.
I did, but I'm not remembering right now.
Ray Liotta, and then he died. But Ray Liotta was originally supposed to be the Dennis Quaid role. The thing is that I'm not going to say that I would never in my life say that Dennis Quaid would give a better performance than Ray Liotta in a movie.
Hey, sounds like he just did.
It almost works better that it's Dennis Quaid because Dennis Quaid simultaneously had Reagan coming out in theaters at the same time. So like we know that he might not have even gotten a script. This might just be like Dennis Quaid actually how he feels about women.
That's one thing. Also, though, the fact that this is a man who is actively experiencing an old age renaissance in a way that actresses aren't allowed to have.
That too. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, we're like, because like there are older actresses who continue to thrive like Streep, but like Dennis Quaid was like a C-lister at best.
Yeah.
And now he's like all of a sudden in like every movie again. When does that happen with women?
No, it just doesn't happen if
like
you're a woman.
The industry angle of this is another really strong thing because like it's Hollywood just kind of amplifies all of the societal standards involving women. Like
Yes.
it is them to their farthest extreme in a really fucked up way. So it's her actively commenting on everyone who's like involved with greenlighting the movie that she's making.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I do think we could see this getting some recognition.
I mean, I really hope
There's something happening.
because
It's bubbling up.
It's an industry. It's an industry film in a way.
So I looked at I went on Gold Derby earlier because I was
She's not in the
curious.
top 5.
She is now in the top 5 as of this week today. She's number 4.
Whoa.
So and I think
For
that
best actress.
yes, and now will that hold?
I did not.
Probably
I think
not.
I checked this last night and she wasn't.
They update on Mondays, so that's why I checked today just to
Yeah,
see.
I think she was
because this is
7.
still living. The thing is, it's still an outside shot because most of the
I
stuff has
think-
not come out yet.
I think that this movie is getting so much acclaim that I think it happens. I think she gets the nom.
I think that she's definitely a lock for an Indie Spirit Award.
Yeah.
Like no doubt, 100%. I think that she will probably win, hopefully win that. But if
there's so many scenes.
If she even gets nominated for The Substance, she doesn't even have to win. If she just gets nominated for The Substance, that is such a massive win for her career, for indie movies, like true indies, not like fake ass indie movies.
And
like,
horror never gets nominated.
Is Lee joining us?
No,
Okay.
she's watching What We Do in the Shadows. She's
Fair
locked in.
I did want to talk a little bit more about the horror parts of this movie because the movie does devolve in the last act.
Can I just say,
Yeah.
the moment that blood started raining down on the audience, I stood up and clapped. I was hooting and hollering.
I think I saw it with a really good audience. It wasn't a packed audience, but I'd say it was like a third to a halfway full. And like it was the moment that the beast, the creature monstro was born. I started cackling, like truly, like audibly, like could not stop, like laughing and like clapping, and people in my audience were like all in, like let's
that's so good.
go.
The
This is
sequence
what we are here for.
Yeah, the monster being created is it's what you've been waiting for the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it reminded me a lot of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, also starring Margaret Qualley.
And we heard this movie was gross. There had been many rumblings about the final stretch, about the final 20 minutes and how crazy it was. And at one point in the movie, I wasn't tracking the time, but I thought, okay, her turning into this incredibly decrepit old lady, like the 3-month jump.
Yeah.
Right.
You're like, is this the monster? Because this is kind of sad right now.
I was
Like,
thinking,
or just old decrepit women.
I was
disgusting
thinking, like,
monsters.
okay, this moment we talked about earlier, the kind of like beating down on the old lady. I was like, okay, I think this is it. I think this might be the crazy ending that everybody was talking about.
Exactly. Even without trying to hear anything, I had heard so much that I was like, this can't be it.
Yeah, but you're
And
waiting.
then
You're like,
when Margaret Qualley takes like the remainder of the substance, it reminded me of in Good Time when he feeds all the acid to the guy.
Yes.
And you're like, no, you can't do that. You can't do
Yeah.
you can't
He
take
gives
that
him
much.
a water bottle of acid. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
it's that feeling of like anything could happen.
Yeah. I feel in danger now.
Yeah, like you're not supposed to do that.
And then her eye, the visual of her eye multiplying into like 10 pupils is so sick.
Yeah.
It looks
so cool.
It looks so good. I don't know how they did it.
Movies are dreams.
It's gorgeous. And then you just get this absolutely beautiful little lady.
I mean, so much of this movie pulls from like very serious things like the story of like the Fountain of Youth, the Portrait of Dorian Gray, even like Stanley Kubrick movies, Fincher movies, Lynch movies. Like they all have their
Requiem.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of Requiem.
Yeah, Aronofsky, like definitely early Aronofsky. Like there are like kind of weird, quasi funny aspects of those movies.
Yeah.
I feel like this movie, this is something that Lee and I talked a lot about. We spent a lot of time talking about this movie. What this movie accomplishes is that it takes these male dominated movies and it points at them, it brings them in, and it flips them on his head. Like we get the 2001 also, what is it? Also Sparks Zathura, the song, the 2001 song that plays.
Thus spake Zarathustra.
I always forget what the boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Basically what that is doing, it is not only saying like, hey, I am bringing in all these influences, but I'm also kind of ridiculing them.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of saying like, hey, we don't have to be that serious. We can make fun of all of this. This is silly. Let's have some fun. Let's splatter blood over all these people. There's a kid here. There's a child. Let's splatter blood over the child.
Also, so going back to before that even happens, and again to this world that just doesn't make sense. It's like the ABC New Year's Eve ball drop, and there's just naked women dancing on stage, and there's like a 7-year-old who's like, "Yay, mommy!"
Yeah, exactly.
And
It's
like an auditorium of like 50 people that are at the New Year's show.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a close. Yeah, it's like on a soundstage. Every New Year's Eve special ever from the last like 30 years is outside.
Yeah.
with thousands of people.
Yeah. It's really so. Like I said, this isn't even trying to like parody like the media that it's portraying. It's just trying to parody all media. Yeah. And so it's just like girls with their titties out with like an audience of all old white guys.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. I mean, it's set up by like the backstage scenes of Quaid walking with all the executives behind him, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Anytime you get a bunch of guys like walking, right? And it's
funny when they just like skip away.
Yeah, it's like watching like Brazil or something.
Exactly. Yeah, Gillian.
It's
a lot of
there's
Gillian.
a lot of Gillian in this. Yeah.
It's like goofy.
Gilliam.
Yeah, it's just silliness, and then you get. So you're going to have to remind me exactly how it goes down, but there's almost like a dream sequence of her getting there. And then she actually does get there.
Well, honestly, the whole time I'm waiting, like I am imagining in my head what happens in the movie before it happens. Like, again, going back to the redundancy, going back to the obviousness, the moment that this idea is established of these two bodies having to be 7 days spaced apart and you have to trade, no exceptions, you're already thinking like, okay, here's a rule that's going to be broken at some point in the movie, right?
Yeah.
You're prepped for it. So the moment you hear about this show, about this New Year's show, you're already thinking like, okay, some shit's going to go down.
How is shit going to hit the fan here on New Year's Day?
Yeah. So I don't remember exactly how it happens, but your mind is already running the tape.
Doesn't her like ass deflate or some shit like that?
So there is a dream sequence beforehand where she's imagining putting on the Demi Moore mask, and everyone's like, "Oh, thank you! Right. You're finally here. We're so happy you're here."
And then you see the reality of it.
Yeah, and then you see the reality, but then she actually does go and show up, which is so weird. You don't do a imagination sequence for something that then happens.
Right.
Like that happens immediately in the next scene.
It's so funny to do that. And she shows up and like to an extent, because like, you know, during the dream sequence, you're like, well, it's crazy that they're all reacting this way, obviously, but also it's crazy the logistics of her like getting there and getting into the studio. Like that would never happen. And then that does happen. She gets into the studio
with the mask,
looking just like a picture, like a printed out picture of Demi Moore that she like,
it's like, I'm normal.
On her
I
face.
have the normal amount of limbs.
Yeah. And then she has, so it's Margaret, I'm assuming, in front. And then it's Demi in her back.
It's an incredible
with her mouth like wide open. Like, like
it's a full practical suit. I don't know who's in that suit. I don't know how they did it.
That's
It is
so cool.
phenomenal.
It looks so good. And then from there, it's just like pure comedy. It's so funny. Like her going out there, not being noticed for a little bit. She's the most obscene creature on earth. And then when they finally notice her, it's just one by one, like women in the audience will stand up and go like, ah!
Yeah. One at a time.
Yeah, just like, yeah, exactly. It's so funny. So much of this movie,
It's
like
fun.
it started with like the media parodies. It reminds me of like a Tim Heidecker
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
And that also is, that's like a Tim Robinson thing. It's
Yeah.
it's like baby of the year. This whole sequence.
Fuck you, Bart Harley.
Yeah,
Travis.
it's like people, standing up one by one, like it's in like the camera movement is the exact same. It's like a zoom in as if the camera
it's the
operator.
smash
like,
zooms.
whoa, what's
Yes.
she about
Yeah.
to do?
To be honest, that is what puts this movie over the edge for me. Like that is what makes me want to give this like 5 stars instead of 4.5, because it wants to be fun. It wants to be
Yeah.
entertaining.
Yeah.
And as it ratchets up, like when you're talking about the camera work, like when you're following little decrepit Demi Moore trying to go back to the substance like cellar, the camera is like shaking so hard as it's following her through the streets. Like that is something that hadn't happened at that point in the movie. Like you are shifting, the filmmaking conventions of the movie are changing as the character is changing. And by the time we get to Monstro, obviously it's a riot. But there are these very deliberate choices made to let go of any type of like seriousness.
For
you know?
all of the themes and like the weightiness that the movie has, it is very flippant at the end in a way that isn't like to dismiss all of the things that came before it, but it's just like this is also like we can have fun in this world.
Even the
we
very
are still
end-
in a movie. This is not a monologue.
the puddle Elizabeth, the little sludge placenta that we end with,
It's
like that is
so-
ridiculous.
It's so cool. Like the way that she falls apart as a monster, and then what's left, which is just a moving puddle with a face. Like
that is phenomenal.
It is so
It's good
cool.
shit.
It's so
just good
fucking
shit.
cool.
no, I feel like no other director would want to do that, because that feels like something you're just not supposed to do. You're supposed to keep it simple. You can't just keep going and going and going.
And, and also the directors who want to do stuff like that visually are people making like Shudder originals,
right, that have like a $2 million budget.
Yeah, and like for the most part, like suck.
Yeah.
But then have really cool visual stuff going on.
Or it's cool visual stuff and there's absolutely no substance behind it. It's like, damn, that shit looked sick and that was a lot of fun, and
It had
it's
half an idea behind
gone.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it has no weightiness to it whatsoever.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm higher than a lot of people I've seen on the movie.
Yeah.
Like I ended up, I think, giving it 4.5, but it's because for all the faults that you can find in it, which you can absolutely find, what are we comparing it to?
Right.
It's
It's so wholly itself. Like this is very much a one of one movie. I'm not going to see another movie this year.
It's
that
definitely like you can compare it to Cronenberg.
Well, no,
The
that's-
Fly, obviously.
But yes, you can compare it to a lot of like really old stuff.
Yeah.
What are you comparing
Not
it to
this
right
year.
now,
Yeah.
where it's having a current message
Right.
and ethos,
Right.
while having truly throwback, like incredible.
I mean, the
visuals?
only thing that comes to mind are movies that have given me similar feelings, but are completely different. Movies like Parasite and Barbie, right? Like something that feels like, oh my God, here is an exciting new thing.
Poor Things.
Poor Things, definitely. Or Everything Everywhere. It's like things like that I'm just like, those are entirely different movies, but it's that feeling of like, wow, this is the 2020s. Like this is not a movie we talked about earlier this year, like Late Night with the Devil, that's trying to do this retro thing. This could have been that.
No, but it's
This
not,
is-
and it's
this-
better for it.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is like, we are going to do something modern, fully current and modern.
Yeah. but skirting around the modern things of like, how do we put cell phones in the story and stuff like that. But
this is a movie about social media. Like
Yeah.
social media is never displayed in the film, in the
but
story.
it's about like people don't want to look at this old hag on TV anymore.
the billboard
Gotta get-
that
yeah.
she can't shake.
Physical media, some might say,
Yeah.
instead of social.
That is part of the idea here is this barrage, this assault on our senses of like what we're supposed to look like, especially women. Like that is the thing, is like this social media has created this enterprise of beauty standards in the modern world for women.
I did want to say, and this kind of touches especially into the beauty standards thing, something I meant to mention earlier. I think that this is a movie that like it uses and weaponizes nudity in a way that like I have not seen in a movie in a very long time, especially not in a modern movie, because there's always it's the worst discourse on the internet of that comes up like every 6 months of Twitter of like every movie would be better if we didn't show naked women. It's like you cheated on your girlfriend.
I'm
bro.
not allowed
You don't
to
gotta
look at that.
Yeah.
I'm married.
I'm like, you guys need to get more comfortable in your relationships. No, but like, is the thing where it's like, this is a movie that it forces you to look at nudity or like soft core nudity to the point that you feel uncomfortable with what you're looking
In a very like not
It's-
sexual context.
It's in a not sexual way. And even whenever it's meant to be sexual, like it's meant to show you ass and titties of Margaret Qualley on the stage, it's the point where it feels bad. You're like, ew. I'm looking at this, but I feel like I'm looking at Dennis Quaid right now. Like I'm looking at the producers that are watching this and ogling.
Yeah.
Like that is kind of the point of it. Obviously, the scene that people most point to is the actual birth of the substance scene itself, where it is just Demi Moore giving birth
Out the
to
back.
Margaret Qualley out the back and everything. And that's something that like can't be illustrated without nudity, but it's stripping out the sexuality behind it. Instead, it feels it's showing it as like a sign of vulnerability.
Right.
It's you have no clothes on, you have no makeup on, you are as stripped down and vulnerable as you can possibly be. You're basically a wild fucking animal out there in nature that's just giving birth to this creature, and it's taking over this other complete side of you. It is now literally taking over your life and your brain.
What I think is even more powerful about that is the juxtaposition of what we're told in the first half of the movie versus the second half of the movie when it comes to, you know, like the idea of whether what we're seeing is beautiful or not. Because Demi Moore's perception of herself when she is about to take the substance for the first time, we're seeing every inch of her naked body. And the context of that scene is to try to tell us that she is going to make this decision because that naked body is not beautiful.
Yeah, because she's disgusted with herself.
She needs to improve it. She needs to look like Margaret Qualley because this current body is not good. And that compared to Monstro is just like, you are gorgeous. You are so that I think is one of the things that needs to be crystallized in this movie is this idea. And I think, honestly, I think it is crystallized now that I'm thinking about it, is the moment where she is so decrepit and she brings out the portrait that she was hiding. She brings it back out and you see it. You see that juxtaposition so obviously displayed. That's like, wow, this body that we thought wasn't enough is so beautiful. So beautiful. This body that you were told needs to be tossed aside. That all sorts of women in Hollywood, when they hit a certain age, are told that they are not worth anything anymore, right? This industry that depends on your physical looks for women becomes this pit of despair because it's like, oh, you're out, you're done.
Right.
As men, we're actually kind of told the opposite. we're told that as we age, we actually
Becoming
matter
a Gray
more.
Fox. Yeah.
You know, and we don't have anywhere close to a similar experience with that aspect of like
I'm often,
especially
I'm
if
often
you were
told this.
if you
Right.
were especially if you were like an actress who like was somebody who, like in Demi Moore's case, was somebody who was idealized because of their beauty.
Right.
Like it's not
It was the
something
one
it's
thing
not
you
a
had.
Meryl Streep where it's like, oh, this like ingenue actress who has all
Yeah.
this talent and everything.
Which-
not taking away from Demi Moore's talents and everything, but that's not what society viewed
Well-
her as. So therefore it was more likely for her to be cast to the side.
And that's why this is like a real true like kismet casting thing, is because even for
it's a little meta.
even a little
A lot of yeah.
it's just even for like the, you know, the wokest of like film buffs, like Demi Moore is someone who was viewed as, yeah, she got to be in a bunch of movies when she was hot, but then everyone figured out that she wasn't actually good, and then she wasn't in movies anymore. And
For
so,
a very long time.
and so for her to come into this, because that happens a lot with actresses when really sometimes the opportunities they're given just kind of suck. And so for her to come into this and just absolutely cook.
yeah, home run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, how many actors are given situations where they start out in a movie young because they're hot, but they do not have the juice? I'm not saying this as like a one-to-one comparison, but like if you watch, and I'm sorry for saying this, if you watch early Bobby Patty stuff, he is not like an incredible actor. But the thing is that he was hot.
New Moon
And
didn't do it for you.
He got enough reps because, like anything, if you are an athlete, if you are an actor, if you are a fucking whatever, any job that you have, you need to have reps to hone your craft. Like, and the thing is that's unfortunate for a lot of women is that once you start to not be as perky as you once were or whatever, a lot of those opportunities go away. And so like you just don't have the same ability that like maybe deep down you are a great actor. You do have a lot of natural abilities, but if you aren't getting those reps, you aren't getting those opportunities
Right.
that you once
and
had.
the industry is built around denying them from you.
Exactly.
Well, yeah.
Then you're just never going to have the chance to become everything that you could be.
And this is also, it's interesting because we're in the middle of like an industry transformation where this is becoming more of the truth for both genders. Not both, but two of the
men
more popular.
you fucking libs.
Two of the more popular. You know what I'm saying though? Like just within the past like 5 to 10 years, I would say it's become more true that youth in men is also valued a lot more than it used to be.
Right.
If you go back to like the 80s, 90s, they're like your average male movie star is like fucking Gene Hackman
Yeah,
or
it's like
whatever.
40s,
it's like an
50s, yeah,
ugly older man, like a fucking hideous older guy, and it doesn't matter.
It's Billy Crystal.
Yeah,
Hey.
so we're so obviously we still live in a world like a very male dominated
Yeah.
Hollywood, in a world where like aesthetically it matters way less what men look like, but like youth in general is being held to a premium way more than
Yeah.
ever.
I
for
I
everybody.
feel like that's why this movie can hit like a bomb right now.
Exactly.
It's like the
It
perfect
hits like a
time.
bomb right now, but also, like I said, it could have come out.
Yeah.
This movie would still rock in the fucking 90s.
Yeah.
Even like it's just that's why I love it. Like it's a modern story that has almost nothing modern
There's a
about
timelessness.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a cool movie.
One thing I need to make sure I mention before we wrap up, we're almost out of time here, but I mentioned last episode that it had hit me on a very personal level because of my chemotherapy cancer experience this year, like just the timing of watching this movie at the end of a 6-month chemotherapy treatment. That idea of 7 days in, 7 days out, that is chemo. Of like going
Yeah.
literally having to go to get injected with something every week to feel not I guess it's inverted because every
feel
other
like
time
shit. Yeah.
time she is injecting it to either feel better or worse. But broadly, that framing of the timeline of 7 days you're you feel good, 7 days you feel bad. That was my experience the past 6 months, and to see it depicted in this movie, and the visceral moments of like the injection of it, just seeing the needle go in and knowing what that is going to cause to the characters in the story, I was like, man, this is insanely relevant to my experience. It was a wild thing to see because, you know, I obviously don't know what it's like to be a woman and to be given this set of expectations of what, you know, beauty standards are, but I know what it's like to feel like your body is deteriorating and like you're having to pull from yourself, like the life out of your own spine to buy more time for yourself later. Like there's all these overlapping feelings with just being like diseased and feeling better, and also trying to understand like what these two different versions of yourself are, and how you are actually one. Like the idea that the version of me that's completely immobile from chemo versus the version that feels amazing 7 days later feels like two completely different people, but they're actually one. So in a very silly movie that ends up being like this wacky body horror thing, it's actually tapping into something incredibly like visceral and real for me. And I don't know if there's many people out there who had a similar experience, but in my case, I was just like totally blown away. I had no idea that was going to be the case.
That could be our new audience, maybe.
Absolutely.
Let's tap in. Let's get.
Well, that's why I want to do the We Live in Time movie, so all these people can hear how.
Should we become a cancer podcast? So you're saying?
That's a crazy, interesting perspective, and it's also
I never would have picked up on that either.
Well,
that's
that's
something
the
that's
thing.
like it's a very much like in the same way, like the most obvious version of it is like we can view and try to like imprint or like try and guess what the women's experience is in a movie like this, but like something like the cancer experience that you're talking about, anything where you are going through some kind of therapy that is taking you, that is a week at a time, week in, you're in hell, you're poisoning yourself,
and then you feel
out,
great
you
later.
feel great is kind of at the crux of what this movie is, like in a very literal way.
It's all, I don't want to say this, but it's almost as if having lived experiences gives you a more dynamic perspective when you are analyzing art. And I don't want to say that because that's bad news for the entire history of this podcast. Especially,
man, when there's like a good movie about like an HR and payroll account manager, like I'm gonna have so many.
Are there any golf movies coming out?
Yeah, as two 20-something white guys over here, like that's the last thing I want to hear.
When's gonna be the great county commissioner's aide movie?
I mean, you know, there's plenty of AIDS movies.
Actually, yeah, there are plenty of AIDS.
But you don't know what I felt watching
Like
Philadelphia.
one of them, The Apprentice, Philadelphia.
It's about the real cost of the high, whatever that high may be.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts on The Substance? I had one last thing written down. I know that one of your favorite Denis Villeneuve movies is Enemy. Did you get any Enemy vibes from this? Any like doubles, clones? Vibes from
for
this?
sure. I definitely clocked Enemy a little bit in there. I could see.
There's just so many different ways to read this movie.
Yeah.
Like you could go the Freaky Friday angle. You could go like the Cinderella angle.
I thought a little bit about Enemy while I was watching it, and I haven't really thought about it since then. But Enemy does share a lot of DNA, and like that whole version. That's much more of the male side of things, of like this like yearning for this younger, more free side of yourself that can go out, go to all these parties, go sucking and fucking and everything else in the world, and do this like well realized.
Remember, you are one.
And same thing as The Substance, same idea. Yeah.
I also had Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria written down as a movie that just like in the final stretch just absolutely fucking goes for it. You know, and you're watching one movie, and then like right at the end, it's like, all right, we're gonna hit the pedal to the gas.
I've heard some Gaspar Noé
definitely.
comparisons.
Body Double by the Brian De Palma movie. A little bit of that.
Also, just again, I mentioned it earlier, but just David Fincher, I think, is one of the least like noticeable influences on this movie. But I thought a lot about Gone Girl. I thought a lot about Seven and Fight Club, and just generally like David Fincher's ability to consider every inch of the frame and the intentionality between every second of the movie.
Yeah, also because especially early in the movie, like all the grosser stuff is shown very clinically. It's not shown in a way that's trying to gross you out. It's just shown as it is, which is gross, and that's a very Fincher thing to do.
Yeah.
I know you hate him, but Nicholas Winding Refn thought a lot about the Neon Demon and Only God Forgives in here.
Fortunately, this movie is better than those.
Right.
So. I mean, I can't state it enough. There's so much Requiem in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, dude,
it's crazy.
The close up of the injection site, that is Requiem.
And it getting like pussier, and grosser, and stuff like that over time.
Well, and the old lady who's going insane, sitting and watching game shows.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like it's very Which, by the way, obviously, I know our boy Darren is. His record is a bit spotty, but if you go back and you watch Requiem, it is a stone cold masterpiece.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
I actually am not. I'm anti late stage Darren because I just think that he's fully lost it, and some people just lose it and they never get it back. But
apparently, Coraline Fargett said that all those close-ups were shot separately. That's how they were able to get the most out of their budget. Is they had their actors, they shot all the scenes with the actors, and then later they had
got a prop.
They wrapped all the actors, and then they had a full like month of just like insert close-ups. So every single time you're cutting to like an insanely visceral close-up of like the most disgusting thing you've ever seen, that was all shot separately so they could take their time with it.
You know, that's really cool because that's a trick that micro budget horrors do.
Well, it's
micro budget horrors are just like, we're just gonna spend a week just doing the gnarly shit like up close. Yeah.
This movie is this movie is approached like it's extremely low budget. You know what I mean? Like
I'm almost surprised that it's 17 mil, but like I mean, it might be
a little more.
But
well, I mean, visually it has plenty going on. It has some hyperbolic, like it makes sense, but it's just the way that it's approached is like majority were in the apartment. You know,
one,
it's what 3 locations really. It's like the central thing.
It's like the apartment, the bathroom. I would count the bathroom as
the bathroom is like its own place, its own little sub spot. The stage / that one Shining-esque hallway.
And then
the
streets.
Yeah.
I did last one I wanted to shout out on my little list here. Shallow Hal, the Farley brothers, Shallow Hal. Definitely thought a lot about Shallow Hal.
Yeah,
watching The Substance.
She actually said that was her main.
Yeah,
all the other ones, she was like, "Who is David Fincher?" I watched
a lot.
Je suis le Farley brother.
Yeah, a lot of me, myself, and Irene in this one too.
All right, we gotta go. We gotta wrap it up.
Okay.
So Megalopolis. What do you?
Yeah. So
we have to have a great debate.
Someday that
it is crazy that they just injected you with like Megalon in your skin during
all better
during
now.
your cancer treatment.
Thanks again, Francis.
Yeah.
You actually got shot in the eye too, and they while they were in there just
literally
2-in-1.
It's been so hard potting because for the last 6 months, whenever I look at you, I hear a sitar. Near. You
know, when Megalopolis comes out on streaming, we should do a watch along pod. I think that's the move. I think
so. I have to watch Megalopolis again. I have to watch it a second time.
Maybe if I beat you at the
good luck,
fantasy
brother.
film.
We're watching 80 for Brady, and there's nothing you guys can do about it.